we saw that in Brazil. We are shrinking the area of growing, but expanding yields because of technology in breeding and technology in fertilization and climate analysis and many stuff that Brazilians, researchers and farmers were learning along the years. So this is a normal way that things go in coffee in Brazil, and is what always the industry expects for Brazil.
Map It Forward is starting a monthly online video discussion group for serious people in the coffee industry for just $20 a month. If you're looking for a place to connect with other individuals and explore a wide variety of topics about the challenges and solutions needed to navigate the many layers of the coffee crisis, this is for you. This space is a new feature for our top tier patrons in our Patreon community. Who are the kinds of people who are already signed up to be a part of this group? Think of the people who are guests on this podcast, and that should give you an idea of the caliber of what to expect. This is not a panel discussion. This is a direct, open discussion group facilitated by me. A great place to network, a great place to explore ideas, a great place to come up with solutions. To join this supportive and engaging monthly online meetup, head to patreon.com/mapitforward and choose the $20 tier. For details, check the show notes. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 1 of a brand new series with one of our regular guests on the podcast. We do not have a year where we don't have this gentleman on the podcast, and it's an honor to welcome back Jonas Ferraresso to the podcast. Jonas, welcome back for 2025.
Welcome, Lee, again here to talk a little bit about the coffee world and coffee in Brazil. I'm so happy to every year bring a little bit of my ideas and my thoughts about what is happening in this crazy coffee world.
You are somebody who is responsible for a part of my education every year about what happens in Brazil. I tell everybody, go follow Jonas. Jonas is a coffee agronomist, and he's one of my go-to people for when I want to understand what's happening in Brazil. Jonas is the guy. So the first thing I want to tell anybody that's listening to this, please go into the show notes and follow Jonas on Instagram and on LinkedIn. The links are in the show notes. And he is absolutely somebody that has the best knowledge that there is out there with regards to what's going on in Brazil on the ground. So in this series, we're talking about what's happening with the Brazilian coffee harvest right now. This is another run, Jonas, of unusual years. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And so, folks, in this episode, Jonas is going to help us understand what's happening, like what is coffee production in Brazil. And Jonas mentioned to me when we were trying to figure out what we're going to talk about in this series, he's like, Lee, I think we need to make sure that before we start talking about what's happening with the harvest for 2025 and what we're expecting for next year, we need to make sure that everybody clearly understands coffee production in Brazil. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. And as we're recording this, which is September the 17th, in this week, coffee prices have gotten as high as $4.20, and they've come back down below $4 in the past couple of hours. And so what is really important here for everyone to understand is the role that Brazil's playing in all of that. And that's what we're going to explore throughout this whole series. So Jonas, in this episode, help us understand how coffee works in Brazil from a production perspective.
Yeah, coffee in Brazil, it's for more than 100 years, a very important crop here. I think now, I'm sure, was one of the most important crops in the last century. And so after the 80s of this, in 1980s, we start to grow more crops like soy and corn and the the country got a very important role worldwide, feeding the world in certain ways because of this capacity of technology. But always coffee plays an important role in Brazil. That means the technology advanced a lot along the years in coffee growing, in coffee farming. But one thing that's interesting about coffee in Brazil, that we still have many farmers, more than today it's about, if I'm not mistaken, 70% of the coffee farms have less than 20 hectares, which for Brazilian standards, it's a small farmer. Yeah.
So they're smallholder farmers, right?
Most of the farmers are, we have like huge farms. I always like to say that not means that we not have huge farmers with 400, 500 hectares of coffee. By the way, we have the biggest farm worldwide in coffee because we have technology to deal with huge farms. We developed that technology, but farmers is still, coffee farms is still in hands of small farmers yet. Not just because technology, but because of the characteristics of growing and the region that the coffee is spread in Brazil. So we have very flat areas like we saw in United States with the corn fields, very, very flat. But we have very mountainous areas like we have in Colombia or Central America. Because of the size of the country, it's possible to grow in the climate that we have here. We could grow coffee in so many different areas with different technology. And always it's a challenge to change ways to do that when we have a very diverse way to grow coffee. So for the big farmers, it's easier. They have more money to implement technology. The area is flat, so it's easy to put machines to work and use less hand labor, which is a problem worldwide in coffee too. But we still have a lot of farmers that are smaller and they do not have ways, not just about money that we're talking because of the price that we are seeing in the last years. In some point, it's good because these small farmers now could do some investment in their farms and put some technology that is feasible for their area. But it's still a challenge to work in mountainous area with a small amount of coffee and and implement this kind of technology in these fields.
So something that people often think about when they think of smallholder farmers is they think that, they're poor people who farm in the old ways and, they're just scraping by and they don't really know a lot. One thing that people don't know about Brazil is that Brazil is incredibly well researched when it comes to agriculture. Like across the board. Am I correct there, Jonas?
Yeah.
Like people don't quite understand how advanced farmers across the board are when it comes to feeding the world, essentially, because a lot of the world's crops come, particularly soy, but and most of the world's coffee comes from Brazil. But it is they use very advanced research and technology in order to produce this coffee, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So when it comes to the way that the year flows with regards to harvests, let's talk about like pre-2020. What was the general flow of the way that a harvest flowed throughout the year? So how did a year go with regards to how coffee was produced in Brazil?
Brazil, as many people that work in the coffee chains know, we have a good season and a smaller season because of characteristics, most because of the Arabicas. because I know some people even know that Brazil is a huge producer of canéforas, the Robusta too. But Arabicas have this, I don't know the word in English, I think it's biennial
so they have an
oscillation.
on season and an off season.
Yeah, off season, exactly.
Right.
And every year, every 2 years, we have a little bit more coffee in the low year, in the off season, and a little bit more coffee in the on season. We are stepping to grow for more than decades. We saw that in Brazil. We are shrinking the area of growing, but expanding yields because of technology in breeding and technology in fertilization and climate analysis and many stuff that Brazilians researchers and farmers are learning or learning along the years. So this is a normal way that things go in coffee in Brazil, and is what always the industry expects for Brazil. So every year they saw Brazil overcome the production. So they think this is normal for the Brazilian standards. More farmers are seeking technology, changing varieties, which is very important to have a better yield. It's a thing that Brazilian farmers are, like we say, in the last 15 or 20 years, they are changing the old varieties for new varieties, which are have better yields, better resistance to plague and diseases. And that's why we saw the area of coffee not expanding, but the volume of coffee that Brazil harvests growing every year. So for this people for the coffee chain, this is what they are expecting. So nobody will see a lack of coffee for the future because Brazil is doing their job, make things better and give them more coffee to the world. But after 2021, that we have the issue with the frost, everything changed in a way that farmers are not so fast as the pressure of climate are putting over them. So we saw after that, Brazil is not doing more this every year overcome the volumes. And we saw, if everyone could see this data, we saw kind of stable numbers in Brazil, even with Brazilian farmers improving their technology, their varieties. Like the climate is more faster than the capacity of the farmers to top these problems for the future. And this is the point that we should be worried because we know not all the countries worldwide that grow coffee have the capacity that Brazil have to expand to push the limits or over the standards that we have worldwide. But if we are not, if farmers are not have enough of ways to do that, even with the prices are good, because in the past the problems was how to invest in coffee if the money that we have is not enough even to pay our bills. And many times, by the way, I think in other podcasts we talk about that, how profits impact the investment in coffee farming. But now, even with the low volumes of coffee they're harvesting, the money that are coming into the farms are okay, so much better than before. But even with that, it's not enough to keep the production growing.
So if I understand you correctly, we know that Brazil has it goes on a 2-year cycle. We have a low season, a low year, and then an up year. And I should preface this by saying when everything's working well. right? Because that hasn't been the case recently. But when everything's going well, we have a low year, then we have a high year, and then a low year, then a high year. The production in Brazil, the yield has been going up, but the area where coffee is produced in Brazil has been shrinking because of why? Because of efficiency, because of weather?
What happens is we grow coffee in a very large area about 20 years ago. Then we shrink in a standard which is about 2 million hectares. And we have a oscillation in these 2 million hectares, a little bit more, a little bit less. And we are keeping that area. One reason is because the high-tech farmers in these last 10 to 15 years expand a little bit. And the areas that is very complicated to work, like very hilly areas in Brazil, some farmers stop to grow coffee there because of the lack of hand labor. And so that is why when I talk about coffee growing, at least in Brazil, we always have to rely almost in the same farmers every year. There's not so much entrepreneurs. It's not so easy to plant coffee and grow coffee. It takes years. It's not like soybeans or corn that you could expand if the prices are good or not. So we have to rely almost in the same farmers in Brazil. That is why the area do not expand. They shrink into a point, which is 2 million hectares. And then we have this amount of area to grow coffee. So we have to expand the yields to make every year a better year.
Right. And so soy has a number of crops every year, and whereas coffee requires an investment over a certain period of time before you start getting the coffee in the first place. There's a bigger investment, but there's more volatility in those crops. How many harvests are there a year for coffee farmers?
In Brazil, we do a period of time which starts about May and go until September. Usually, it's where we do harvesting.
And from 2021, there was a frost that happened with 3 frost occurrences, I believe. Very severe frost that I remember at the time you came on the podcast and you were telling us that this required so much research that you had to look into older kind of books to kind of find that you were burying plants with the soil. Am I correct? That's what you were doing back then. This was a pretty severe situation. Not pretty severe. It was a very severe situation that caused a lot of problems for the farmers. And since that year, nothing has been predictable with regards to the harvest. And we've had people like you, people like Felipe, Morillo, that have come on the podcast and talked to us about how unpredictable the weather and the availability of water has been, the temperatures, and that has really messed with the harvest over the years. And one of the things that we are going to address through this series, folks, is whether this is just something that's happening for this moment or whether this is a new normal. And it's important. Jonas and I, when we were setting up how this series is going to flow, we wanted people to understand the seriousness of this moment. And, as Jonas is a coffee agronomist, his job is to figure out for his clients how to get the best success for them. And when the weather is changing and unpredictable, just like for somebody like me, who my job is to help my customers, my clients, be prepared for what's happening in the markets, what's happening in business and economics so that they can thrive in their business. If we can't understand what's normal, that becomes much harder to navigate. And so right now we're faced with a lot of challenges. We're faced, particularly the harvest in Brazil is, forget about all the like economic and geopolitical issues that are happening with regards to tariffs, et cetera. Forget that for a second, because on the ground, there are a whole bunch of challenges that the harvest is being presented with right now. And that's what we're going to explore in the next episode. So join us as we start to understand what the challenges are in this current harvest and what it means for the next harvest, because this is important. Join us. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. This episode is part of a 5-part series produced by Mapper Forward. Check the full playlist and guest details in the show notes, as well as how you can support our work in the coffee industry. Become a premium YouTube subscriber, explore our Patreon and any brands we've partnered with to bring you this podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us grow our audience.